You're fired. That's what happened yesterday as the University of Miami has parted ways with defensive coordinator Lance Guidry. This was something that obviously folks wanted to happen. Most fans of the University of Miami wanted to see happen. But there was questions if Mario Cristobal would pull the trigger and make it happen. But the Miami Hurricane defense this year is the reason that the Miami Hurricanes did not go to the playoffs. And we can blame Mario Cristobal. You can blame the players. You can blame the coaches on the defensive side. You can blame a lot of people. But at the end of the day, the defensive coordinator's job is to put his players in the position to be successful. And they were not. In fact, they looked like the worst defense I've ever seen in my lifetime as a Miami Hurricanes fan. And that's since I was a child. This is the worst defense I've ever seen. But before we jump in, thank you so much for continuing to support this channel. This is Rudy's Rant, powered by Come On Now, the podcast. I am your host, Rudy Rodriguez Showmont. If you're new to this channel, please be sure to like, subscribe, and follow. Hit that bell, leave a comment. Let me know your thoughts on this topic. I greatly appreciate your feedback. Let's jump in on it. Lance Guidry had a defense that was the worst thing that I've seen in my lifetime at Miami. And although the numbers don't tell you that they were, because they still were middle of the pack in terms of points per game. They were actually upper third in yards per game. But it was the fact that against pretty much any decent opponent, they got pieced every flipping game. They got pieced by Virginia Tech, who at the time wasn't looking that great. They got pieced by Cal, who couldn't score points. They got pieced by Louisville. Now they won all three of these games. And even in the Louisville game, they actually weren't in, they were leading most of the way. They were up 2 touchdowns in the second half because they have the most potent offense in football this year. But against Virginia Tech, they were trailing. Against Cal, they were getting blown out, came back. But it also showed you they can make stops when they need to make stops. It's just the thing is you shouldn't have to be in that position every single game, right? And then you look at the game against Duke, they were down 28-17, and then they get hot and they made a few plays. Then you have the game against Syracuse, where they have a 21-0 lead, and the defense just completely shits the bed. The Georgia Tech game, naturally, the 18-play, 10-minute drive that completely shifted the game. The fact of the matter is this team looked like it didn't know what it was doing defensively all season long. The Miami defensive backfield was horrendous. The linebacker play was horrendous. The defensive line play most of the season was largely ineffective and bad. So you fired Lance Guidry. Now what? Who are you going to bring in? I'm not going to speculate as to potential new coaches. I don't do that. I don't have the energy for that. I don't care enough. I have to trust that they're going to hire someone who is an experienced, successful defensive coordinator from a college program in this country, Division I college program, preferably Power 4 conference program coordinator. Not someone from a non-power conference. Not you need to go pluck somebody who has pedigree in this job. What will that cost? I don't know. I'm sure Lance Guidry was making over $1 million a year. I'm sure probably close to $2 million a year, as I would think. I don't know what his salary was. I'm presuming what was Lance Guidry's salary? At Miami, okay, they don't have his salary here. Shit. Apparently, he actually signed an extension beginning of this year. That's crazy. That's crazy. I can't find what he's making, but I'm gonna guess this guy was making definitely in the seven figures area. I'd be shocked if he wasn't. All that said, he's gone. He's no longer the coordinator. And I'd be looking at someone who's coaching at a Power Four conference and offer that guy the bank. Because end of the day, even if your offense isn't great, if your defense is really good, you are going to win a lot of football games. I think that you see that with certain programs who they didn't have the firepower that Miami did. Georgia did not have the firepower Miami did this year on offense. They won a bunch of games playing defense. They had blowouts too, and they did lose 2 games, but they won a bunch of games. They beat Texas playing defense. They beat Texas twice playing defense. You know, think of any other. I tell you what, I'd be looking at the. I don't know who the coordinator in Michigan is. I'd be looking at him. I don't know who he is. I mean, who's the defense coordinator in Michigan? Wink Martindale is the defensive coordinator at Michigan. I'm gonna tell you right now. Tell you, I'd be making a phone call to that guy. I don't know what he's making, but to watch the way his defenses performed their last 2 games against Ohio State and Alabama, that's someone who I'm making a phone call to. That's my opinion. That is my opinion. That's a man I'd be calling. But whoever it is, it is. But it starts with firing everybody else. No one else should be coming back. So Martindale was a defense player for the Giants, the Ravens, the Broncos, the Raiders, and now he's in college. I guess now he showed that he can do college football. So let's give him a call. Again, I doubt it will be him, but here's where the problem is. You got to fire everybody else. Whoever's brought in as the defensive coordinator needs to be given the power to hire whoever he wants as his defensive coaches. That means Joel Salave, bye-bye. Chevis Jackson, bye-bye. Jason Taylor, good luck, bro. Derek Nicholson, we won't miss you. I'm not being mean. I'm being real. Jason Taylor might be one of the greatest defensive linemen in the history of professional football. His defensive line stunk. His defensive line stunk. It wasn't good. They got no pressure all year. Ruben Bain badly regressed. I know he had some injury stuff, but no, he regressed. He absolutely regressed. The linebacker play was brutally bad. The cornerback play was, and the thing is, the best unit on the team was the defensive line. On as far as on the defense, it was the defensive line. Francisco Maigoa was their best linebacker, and that guy missed more tackles than anything on earth. Couldn't cover anybody. The defensive backs, brutal. Brutal. Let's look at the second. The Canes had 36 sacks. That's decent. That's decent. But there's no dominant pass rusher on this defense. Tyler Baer had 5.5 sacks. I think he had 3 in the first 3 games. Akeem Mesdor, 5.5 sacks. Simeon Barrow, 5.5 sacks. Ruben Bain, 3.5 sacks. Elijah Alston, 2.5 sacks. Like, these are not, there's no one that's putting pressure consistently. I'm sorry, 5.5 sacks in a 13-game season is not good. Like, if you go back and look at numbers that Miami Hurricane elite defensive linemen had, I remember Daniel Stubbs in the 80s had like 17 sacks. Rusty Medeiros, Kevin Patrick, Darren Crine, Jerome McDougal, Calais Campbell. Like, these guys were taking the quarterback down. They lived in the backfield. They lived in the backfield. Miami didn't have that. So Jason Taylor, whatever you did or didn't do, it didn't work. It didn't work. Travis Jackson, you should know that you shouldn't have a job. I mean, after that debacle in your secondary. Salavi's also defensive line coach with Taylor. I mean, he was the run game coordinator for defense. Yeah, when people run the ball, we typically stopped it again, unless it was Georgia Tech. And the last series against Syracuse. But this is an overhaul. This is a complete, whoever you hire hires his own coaches. And you better not keep any of these guys, because they don't deserve to keep their jobs. Your defense cannot be that fucking bad and you keep a job. I mean, you're talking about they're never in formation. They're never aligned correctly. They're whenever someone's in motion, they lose they get completely discombobulated. Like, a guy goes in motion and everyone's lost. Going in motion, you are guaranteed to get yards on Miami. If you didn't go in motion against Miami, you're stupid. Because every play against Miami should have had someone in motion. Because every single time people did that, they got yardage. The lack of assignments, technique, like, these are the things that were just glaring. The misalignment constantly was going on. Did this team play zone all year? Did they play zone all year? The man never adjusted. He never adjusted. It was the worst experience of my life as a Hurricanes fan, watching this defense. This is the worst defense that we've had ever. And we've had a bunch of 6-6 and 7-5 seasons over the last 20 years. And I will tell you this, there was never a defense this bad. Like, these guys couldn't stop anything. They couldn't stop anything. Even last year's defense was way better than this defense. The same coach, defense last year was way better than this defense. If we had last year's defense, this team is sitting in the playoffs right now. This team beats Syracuse. This team beats Georgia Tech. This team is a 3 seed, maybe a 2 seed. If this team had last year's defense, Miami beats Georgia Tech, Miami beats Syracuse, and Miami's the 2 seed behind Oregon. And they're playing tomorrow night against Notre Dame, potentially, because Georgia would have been moved down to the 3 seed. But Miami would have been the 2 seed in this thing if they had last year's group. I mean, just look at last year's look at the scores in last year's games, and you see it. You see it. You know, last year's games. Let me find this crap. Why isn't there a drop down? Of course there isn't a drop down. Yeah, let's look at it right here. I mean, look at this year. They gave up 34, 38, 45, 31, 28, 42, 42. Last year, they gave up 40 points once the entire season. They gave up 30, a handful. They gave up 33 to A&M. They won by 15. They gave up 23 to Georgia Tech, 41 to North Carolina, 20 to Clemson, 26 Virginia, 20 to NC State, 27 to an undefeated Florida State, 38 to Louisville, 20 to Boston College, 31. I mean, I went 7-6. Their defense last year was better than this one. Can you imagine giving last year's defense to this year's offense? And last year's defense wasn't a world beater, but it wasn't bad. It wasn't horrible. This group was horrible. Like, I've never seen anything so bad in my life. And now the defensive coordinator has been fired. Cristobal had to make the move. He had to make the move. I mean, when I heard that there was talk that he might not do it, I was shocked. Absolutely shocked. How are you not firing this man? Because if you don't fire him, You're getting fired next year if it's because of the same shit. If you're bad because of the same shit. I.e., if your defense is bad again. You're the one getting fired. But anyhow, good riddance, Lance Guidry. I won't miss you, and I hope whoever Miami hires is given the power to get rid of everybody. Hire his own people. What are your thoughts, Hurricanes fans? Are you happy with this firing? Do you care? What are your thoughts on the rest of the staff? I think that at the end of the day, Miami better find a quarterback because I think we learned real fast that Emory Williams is not that guy. They didn't let him throw the ball in the bowl game. They were not prepared to play. They weren't prepared to play him. That's coaching. Again, they weren't even prepared to play that dude. It's insane. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Be sure to like, subscribe, follow, ring that bell, leave a comment. This is Rudy's Rant, Facts or Feelings. Come on now.